I hadn't been back to that town in over 10 years. Nothing bad had happened there. Life just moved on. Jobs changed, people scattered, and eventually the place stopped coming up in conversation at all. I remembered it mostly as a place you passed through, not somewhere you stayed for long. The kind of town that didn't leave much of an impression once you were gone. When my company assigned me to a short-term project in the area, I didn't think much of it. It was a small rural town a few hours from the city. Quiet. Temporary. The kind of assignment people didn't argue over because it sounded easy enough. Someone in my extended family owned a house on the outskirts of town, and I was told I could stay there instead of booking a motel. It seemed easier than driving back and forth. No one mentioned who was currently looking after it, only that the place was available. I arrived just after sunset. The town was quiet, but not abandoned. Streetlights were sparse, and most houses were dark, like everyone had turned in early. Even the few cars I passed were parked and empty, pulled close to driveways as if they hadn't moved in days. The house itself looked intact, old but cared for. No broken windows, no signs of neglect. The yard was trimmed, the porch swept clean, and the front door looked freshly painted. I knocked. After a moment, the door opened. A woman I didn't recognize stood there. She was dressed plainly, her hair pulled back, her expression neutral in a way that made it hard to guess her age. She didn't introduce herself, just stepped aside and let me in. I assumed she was a caretaker or someone hired to keep an eye on the place. It felt awkward to ask too many questions right away. Inside, the house was warm. The heat was on, like it had been left running for winter. Lamps were lit in several rooms. The kitchen lights were on. Someone had been there recently. The air smelled faintly of cooked food and something dusty beneath it, like a place that was rarely opened but carefully maintained. I set my bag down and looked around. The furniture was covered neatly, as if the house was prepared for guests. Nothing felt out of place, but nothing felt lived in either. On the dining table, a lot of food had been laid out, far more than one person would make. Several dishes, still warm. Steam rose faintly from one of them, and the plates were already set. I asked if anyone else was staying there. The question seemed reasonable, but asking it made the room feel quieter. "Not tonight," the woman said. Her voice wasn't unfriendly, just distant. She avoided looking directly at me when she answered. She showed me to a bedroom and told me to get some rest. The bed was made neatly, the sheets already turned down, like she'd been expecting me. I asked when my relatives would be back. She paused before answering. "Later," she said. That night I didn't sleep well. Not because I felt scared, because the house never fully went quiet. The sounds weren't loud enough to wake me completely, but they kept pulling me back to the edge of consciousness. I kept hearing small sounds, a cabinet closing, footsteps upstairs, a television turning on and off, normal house noises, just continuous. Always one thing after another, never overlapping, like someone moving carefully from room to room. Sometime after midnight, I got up to get water. The hallway lights were off, but the kitchen was still faintly lit when I reached it. The kitchen was empty. Every dish from earlier was gone, cleaned, put away. The table was bare. Not a single crumb or plate left behind. In the morning, no one was home. The house felt colder than it had the night before, even though the heat was still running. I waited for hours. No calls, no messages. My phone had signal, but there was nothing from anyone connected to the house. When I stepped outside, a neighbor across the road watched me from his porch. He didn't wave or look away when I noticed him. After a while, he walked over. He asked who I was visiting. His tone was careful, like he was choosing each word. I told him the family name. He hesitated, then said, "I don't think anyone's been staying there." He told me the house had been empty for years, sold, then left unused. No one had lived there since an incident no one liked talking about. When I asked what kind of incident, he shook his head and changed the subject. I asked about the woman who answered the door. He shook his head again, slower this time. I left town that afternoon. I didn't lock the door when I left. It was already unlocked when I checked. There was nothing to report, nothing I could explain. The project finished without issue, and no one ever asked about my stay. Weeks later, I looked up the property records. No listed residents, no recent activity, no utilities registered under a name. Everything about the house suggested it should have been cold and dark. But I still remember how warm the house felt when I stepped inside, and how the lights were already on.